I'd like to call this Counseling Committee meeting to order. Madam Clerk, the roll call, please.
All members of council are present, Your Worship.
There are no announcements this evening. There's no addendum. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Councillor Butler?
Thank you, Your Worship. Under consent agenda items, and if you bear with me for a moment, it is PDS-04-2019, as my business does business with a couple of the members of Westwind Niagara Developments.
Okay, so then we'll deal with that separately so that, are there any others? Madam Clerk, I have pecuniary interest with respect to an item in report CAO 01 for 2019, which was the Land Committee minutes. It's item 311, dealing with Grove Avenue, and there's a report as well, PDS 09, which deals with Grove Avenue. One of my daughters lives within the notification area for that issue. If there are no others, there are notices of upcoming public meetings with respect to the budget in particular. So we have a meeting on this Wednesday, February the 6th, which will be the capital budget and forecast. The next meeting will be February the 20th, 2019. That's the library and the EDTC budgets. March the 5th is the next budget meeting, and that will deal with the general levy, operating budget, and assessment analysis. And if necessary, there'll be a 5th budget meeting on March the 20th, 2019. All of these meetings take place here in the council chamber at 6 p.m. We anticipate that on February the 11th, which is next Monday, we'll be passing the bylaw relative to water and wastewater rates. Monday, February the 25th, we will be doing the preliminary capital budget approval, and on March the 25th, we anticipate we'll pass the bylaw with respect to the general levy and general capital budget. So there are several public meetings this evening. The very first public meeting relates to the building code, and I understand that Mr. Jennings is going to be providing us with some information relative to the proposed increases in building permit fees. Good evening. Waiting for the
IT.
IT to be teed up.
So this is the public meeting as a requirement of the Ontario Building Code Act when the municipality is considering any change to the building permit fees. Notice of the public meeting was provided by taking out an ad in the Fort Erie Post on January 3rd of 2019. Providing the notice in the local paper meets the mandated legal requirement of providing notice. In addition to the legal requirement, staff also provided notice through town's website, town's Facebook page, and notice of the public meeting and the proposed fees were also emailed to the town's frequent builders, so they were aware of it. Finance Department presented the fees and charges report on January 23rd with a recommendation at that time to hold the public meeting. So why are the building permit fees increases proposed? Where the revenue collected is not sufficient to cover the cost associated with the enforcement of the regulation, the general tax levy supplements the difference. If revenues exceed the anticipated expenses, the funds can be transferred to a reserve account. It is expected that the proposed fee increase, if approved, would increase the revenue by about $65,000. Most municipalities are striving to be cost neutral. So you can see between 2008 and 2014, there's a total shortfall that was supplemented by the tax levy of $1.175 million. In 2017, there was a budgeted revenue of 472,000 with expenses equal 792,000, having that shortfall of 320,000. In 2018, it was $530,000 revenue with an expense of 809,000, having a shortfall of 279,000. Again, supplemented by the general tax levy. So in 2016, building permit fees did receive a consumer price index increase of 0.9%. In 2017, they received the consumer price index again of 1.8, with some selected categories receiving various increases of up to 10%. In 2018, again, received 1.7% increase, and the 2019 proposed CPI increase is 2.2%. So the proposed fee increases include consumer price increase of 2.2%, as I said, and a variety of other categories. We're looking at receiving increases of 10% and up to 15%. The idea here is to bring it into line with the regional averages. So you can see the assembly charge at the top is $1.43 currently. It's proposed to go to $1.60, which equals a 10% increase. We're slightly below the regional average of $1.66 a square foot. There's a variety of increases are all around 10% to get us close to that regional average, with the minimum fee seeing a 15% increase of going from $130 to $150, which is in line with the regional average. Some of the other proposed increases include public pools. Regional average there is $740, where we're proposing to go from $376 to $430, which is a 15% increase. Same with our in-ground pools, slight increase there from $161 to $185, which is slightly above the regional average for that case. Price per construction per $1,000. Where we can't categorize a building permit application where it doesn't fit, we do it by estimated value of construction. So we're going to look at it increasing that to $14.12 per $1,000 of construction value. The revisions for the per hour amendment to a permit is currently at $52. We're looking at increasing that to $80. There are already currently fees in our bylaw for revisions and for amendments and clearance letters that are at the $80 rate. This rate, for some reason, was at 52. So we're just looking to bring that one in line with the other rates. Minor variance applications for sign bylaws and the appeal for the decision of a minor variance for the sign bylaw. We're looking just to bring those in line with the fence bylaw amendments and minor variance application for fences from 428 to 454, with all the rest of the fees receiving the standard CPI index of 2.2%. A couple of new fees are proposed. One is a third-party review for plans examination and inspections. So this is where we feel that an outside agency or an outside company is better to have a third-party review of a non-biased reasons to review a larger scale building. So primarily looking at something like a structural engineer. So if we were to have a high-rise building come in, if we wanted to have an engineer look at the foundation, for example, we would hire an engineer. Those costs would just be transferred over to the contractor or to the applicant. This is common in some of the other municipalities across the region. Don't see this happening very often. Again, we're looking at only large-scale applications that would have that. Any kind of, if we're even looking at going to that third-party review, that would be discussed well in advance for any of the applicants. So we're having that conversation with them at the early onset so they know that these fees may be incurred. Same with alternative solutions. So the Ontario Building Code has prescribed requirements of how things have to be constructed. Where a builder doesn't find that those requirements are either feasible or maybe not cost effective or may have a conflict with their design, they can propose what's called an alternative solution. It's a different method of complying with the requirement. So with the requirements in the code, there's also called a functional statement and objective of each function, or each requirement of what that code provision is trying to achieve. So with an alternative solution, they actually have to go through the functional statements and the objectives, and then they have to provide a reason to how they can meet that in an alternative way. So typically we would see that through possibly doing things like time studies, fire protection, engineering, or other requirements. When those criteria come forward or those proposals come forward, again, we would look at third-party review to look at time studies or the fire requirements that are outside the scope of the building code. Again, it's very rare. I don't see this happening very often. And again, they would know well in advance if they were proposing an alternative solution that we would have that conversation of what the cost would be. Currently, our building bylaw does have alternative solution provisions in there, and it says it is charged at the applicable rate, but there was no rate ever established in the fees. One of the other new proposed changes is how private property plumbing is dealt with. We've had an increase in development of condo developments, and with the increased development of condos, we've realized that there's a shortfall in the costing for on-site plumbing work, which is on private property, which falls out of our subdivision agreements, which is public, so it falls under building code. Currently, we have a flat fee charge per fixture like catch basin or hydrant, and then we have a flat fee for the piping in the ground. It doesn't recover the cost that's involved with the inspections. So we're proposing that they keep the flat rate for the first 10 meters of piping, and then after that, we take a $3 per additional meter thereafter. We don't see this impacting a lot of our single-family dwelling charges because most of our houses are built within the 10-meter charge, or 10-meter distance, so they would stay under that current flat rate fee. So the next couple slides are just some examples of how the proposed fees would impact some housing around here. So these examples were actually taken of houses that were built in the last couple of months. This is their square footages, this is the information they provided, and this is what they paid under the existing rates. So in the first example, we see a 2,360 square foot house. The building permit fee for the house itself was $2,784. The proposed rate takes that just over $3,068. Same with the garage. We see a $5 difference in the garage price and a dollar charge difference in the porches. Works out to a total fee difference of $288.88. If we look at the estimated value of construction on this house, is the information they provided us. It was $300,000. The proposed fee increase was less than 0.1% of that total value of construction. The next example, the house is slightly smaller. It's 433 square feet. Works out to about $150 difference in the permit fee for the house. The garage works out to, again, a $4 difference, and the porch is relatively the same. Total fee is $166 difference. The estimated value of construction on this house was actually $410,000. So the difference over that price of the house works out to 0.04% of the value of construction. Future fee increases, annual increases, the permit fees equal to the CPI indexing would be proposed again. That's done annually. This is to ensure that the revenues collected through the permit process continue to strive to that cost neutral goal that we're always going for. And then they're reviewed annually to see if there's any additional increases that are warranted at this time. So next steps, the proposed fee bylaw is scheduled to be presented to council for consideration on February 11th. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jennings. So this will be an opportunity for those in the audience to be aware. Members of council can ask questions of Mr. Jennings, and then if there's anyone that wishes to speak to us with respect to this issue, you'll be called forward. Any members of council have any questions of Mr. Jennings? Councilor Luberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Reddick. Mr. Jennings, could you go back to, I think it was the second slide, the difference.
Oh, that one?
Yeah. 2018, 2017. there was a major difference. So in 2017, you budgeted $472,000. But the total expenses was $792, or 92,000. Why would you project that in 2018 it would only be 530, when in 2017 the actual was 792? Why wouldn't you at least budget 792?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, for the revenue, we look at the actual fees that were collected the previous year. And then we project what our expected revenue would be coming in. So we didn't project that our revenue coming in would equal 792,000. So based on the current building permit fees, in order to get to the 792,000, there'd be a substantial fee increase. Because it works on the amount of construction we have and the number of permits.
When do we budget our fees? Do we do that now, or we?
That's what we're talking about, yeah.
So, again, at the end of 2017, you collected $792,000, right?
No.
Those were the expenses. Those were the expenses for the department.
Well, yeah, the expenses were 792,000. I'm not understanding why, if it cost you $792,000 in 2017, why didn't you expect that that's at least how much it was gonna cost you in 2018?
Well, he has. The 2018 expenses actually went up from 792 to 809,000. So there was an increase in those as well. So the projected revenue has gone up, so have the expenses. If you look at the chart.
Yeah.
And then you see the shortfall has actually come down from 2017 to 18 as a result of the increased revenue from the increased fees.
That's correct. And it could be permit activity as well.
All right, now, let's go back up, go further into the slide. There's no numbers on here, so
Okay.
I will go to where you talk about the pool and the in-ground pool.
Yeah.
Now, what pool are we talking about?
The very first one is a public pool.
Which one?
Sorry, the very top one, the $430 one,
Yeah,
that would be a public pool.
what pool?
Like a Kingsman pool. If somebody wanted to build a new public pool,
Yes,
that's what the fee would be.
but we haven't agreed to that yet,
That's correct. That's proposed.
but you're putting it into fees. Are we gonna be charging people for it? For something we haven't decided we're gonna do yet?
Well, the whole purpose of this exercise is to provide adjustments to the fees that have been charged in 2018, and the proposal is for 2019. That's why it says proposed for 2019. It's subject to the approval of council, and Mr. Jennings is making a presentation, and then the public has an opportunity to comment if they wish, and then we'll ultimately have to decide whether we're going to agree or not agree with all or some or none of the proposed increases.
So, but the public pool and the in-ground pool, are they the same pool?
No, in-ground pools would be private property pools,
Oh,
or
all
public
right,
pools
okay.
would be the ones that the public
right.
has access to.
Okay, all right. So that's something that we haven't agreed to, we'll have to see. So that will make a change, we'll have to make a change on that, right?
That's,
If we decide that we don't want that included in the fees.
that would be council's direction.
Okay, all right.
Any other councilors? Councilor Noyes?
Thank you, Mayor Redekop, to you, to Mr. Jennings. Thank you for your presentation. If you go back to the slide number 2, that one. Now, it looks like, again, that there's a lot of, that's going to be supplemented by the tax levy. Is that typical of other municipalities too, in that what we budgeted for revenue and what we land up spending is different to that extent?
I can't speak for all the municipalities. There are municipalities that are at a cost neutral, based on their permit activity and their fees. And there are other ones that are still supplemented through the tax levy.
And just one further question, if I may, through the mayor. These are permit fees, not the development fees that we're talking about, right?
That's correct.
Any other counselors? Mr. Jennings, so what is the anticipated impact of these proposed increases in terms of the budgeted revenue?
We expect that to be about $65,000 of additional revenue.
So that would reduce the need to charge $65,000 on the general levy,
That's correct.
which is I think what Councillor Noyes was driving at. So is it possible for you to provide us with some background information such as what the rates have been, the rate increases over the past 5 years?
Yep, yeah, for sure. I can bring a memo to council.
Okay, that would be fine if you did that, just so that we have an understanding. Maybe it would also be helpful if we could have the list of budgeted revenue and budgeted expenses, or actual revenue, actual expenses for the same period of time, so we can see what progress we're making and what the impact is in terms of requiring the actual user to pay these fees, which provides relief to the general levy.
Mhm. Okay,
Thank you.
I can provide that.
Any
Thanks.
questions arising out of that? If not, thank you, Mr. Jennings, and we'll ask members of the public if there's anyone who wishes to address us with respect to this. And don't go away, Mr. Jennings, because there may be a need for us to get further information from you. Is there anyone who wishes to address council with respect to the proposed increases in the permit fees? I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone here who wishes to address council with respect to the proposed increases in permit fees? Please come forward, sir. And could we have your name and address, please, for the record?
Justin Gigoni, 291 Matthews Road.
Good evening.
Really, the fees, it's not, the small increase doesn't really affect me at all. But every week we seem to be asking for more money from the citizens. I've yet to see one thing say, well, where can we cut the waste there? I haven't seen, I'd love to see if Mr. Jennings showed us what the breakdown of the permit. If I hand in a permit, what am I paying for? What does the town provide? Where can we cut that cost? Not just for this, but for everything else.
Do you have some specifics? Other than these permit fees you're speaking about, do you have some areas where you can advise us where you believe there's waste?
Oh, well, that's what I'm saying. I'd like to see, when we're proposing it, we break down of, okay, this is what we're doing. Maybe we can cut the waste somewhere. None of our councilors ask, well, can we cut the waste? I'm sure there must be somewhere we can save, I don't know, 1% or 2%. Right?
So you're talking about the expenses aspect of this equation?
Yes.
Not so much so we'd have to come up with, if this is gonna generate $65,000, and if we were to expend the same amount.
If we could save 65,000 instead of charging me more,
Well, we'd still have a $279,000
We'd still have a big, yes.
deficit to make
right?
up.
Yeah,
So we'd have to come up with more than $65,000 in savings.
absolutely. Yes. So but I'm sure we could find it somewhere.
Well, I guess if
Maybe not that
who doesn't know
much.
how the system works, I guess it's easy to say.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
but could we maybe start looking at that?
I'm confident that our staff is going to tell us that they're doing that all the time.
Okay.
And so we do look for efficiencies because it's not a pleasant thing for us to have to increase fees, development charges, taxes, water and wastewater charges. That's not something that we do with great
No.
relish. We do it simply because there are costs that we have to cover. And so we do look for efficiencies, and I'm sure the CAO would say that the town is doing a great job. I don't know, Mr. Cook, do you want to make any comment at this point? Okay.
Just I look at what the average job in Fort Erie pays somebody, and I think it's around 27,000. People, a little more. The job, not what people make in Fort Erie, but the average job here, right? People in town can't afford to keep paying more.
So this exercise actually places the burden on the people who are taking advantage of the service,
Yeah,
or who are building or who require a permit of some sort. And that actually then shifts the burden away from the general taxpayer.
okay,
That's part of the philosophy with respect to these fees,
okay,
okay?
yeah.
Before you go, any members of council have any questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Jagoni.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else who wishes to address council with respect to this? And I'm going to declare this public meeting closed, and we look forward to receiving the information that we've requested. Might not be a bad idea as well if you were to provide council with an example or two of how the actual fees relate to the service that's provided or the work that goes into that particular fee. I did neglect at the beginning of the meeting to mention that this meeting is being held on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Mississaugas of the New Credit, which are the subject of the Mississaugas Treaty at Niagara in 1781, and the Between the Lakes Treaty Number 3 of 1792, and the Anishinaabe people's lands as well. So that takes us then to 3 public meetings under the Planning Act, all of which will follow a similar process. So we will receive comment from a staff member, some background information. Each public meeting does have a report contained in our agenda this evening, which council will be dealing with later on. They're all at this stage for information purposes. Once the planner has provided us with background and we have asked whatever questions we might have, I will then ask members of the public to come forward. First, the proponent, if the proponent wishes to address council, then anyone who wishes to speak in favor, and then finally anyone who wishes to speak in opposition. So we'll start the first public meeting under the Planning Act, which is the draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment regarding 613 Holiness Street. Good evening, Mr. Kernahan.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. Thank you. Applications for a draft plan of subdivision and amendment to the town's comprehensive zoning bylaw were received from John Perry, who's the agent for 189-1187 Ontario Inc., represented by Mario Bavacqua, who is the owner of the subject property located at 613 Helena Street. The proposed draft plan of subdivision would permit the property to be developed for 46 single-detached dwellings, 121 semi-detached dwelling units, and 184 townhouse dwelling units. The proposed rezoning would change the zoning from a neighborhood development ND zone to a RM1 zone, which permits townhouses, semi-detached dwellings, as well as single-detached dwellings. Notification of this public meeting was provided in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act by placing an advertisement in the January 10th, 2019 edition of the Fort Erie Post. In addition, property owners living within 120 meters were mailed notice of the public meeting on this same date. This is an aerial photograph of the subject property and the surrounding neighborhood area. The subject lands are located in the Craft neighborhood, north of Albany Street, between Helena Street and Craft Road. Subject property is located on the west side of Helena Street, approximately 400 meters north of Albany. Approximately 2/3 of the site is cleared and being used as a hobby farm with horses, as well as for a single detached dwelling. The balance of the site is a woodlot and has some provincially significant wetland on it. Land uses surrounding the subject property include provincially significant wetlands to the north and south, Helena Street, a single detached dwelling, and provincially significant wetlands to the east. To the west is a woodlot, a provincially significant wetland, and a single detached dwelling. This slide shows the proposed plan of subdivision. As I mentioned, the subdivision includes 46 single-detached dwellings, 121 semi-detached dwelling units, and 184 townhouse dwelling units. The proposed dwellings within the subdivision would all front onto a new municipal roadway built to municipal standards that loops through the subject property. The proposed single-detached dwellings are located in the eastern half, or the right-hand side of your screen, of the subject property, and the townhouses and semi-detached dwellings are located in the western half, or to the left. There's a stormwater detention pond proposed in the south central portion of the site, and a 15-meter vegetated buffer is proposed along the southwest and north property boundaries to protect the adjacent wetlands from development impacts. There were a number of studies that were completed and submitted to support a complete application on this property. They included a planning impact analysis, an environmental impact study, functional servicing report, traffic study, archaeological study, as well as a Phase 1 environmental impact assessment. This slide shows the natural heritage features on and in the vicinity of the subject property as identified in the town's official plan. There are natural heritage features on and adjacent to the subject site that include provincially significant wetlands and woodlots over 2 hectares. As I mentioned, the applicant prepared an environmental impact study to support their application and assess impacts on these features. Both the Region of Niagara and the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority have jurisdiction over the review of the environmental impact study. Both of these parties have indicated that they have some concerns with the EIS and have requested some additional information. The applicant, who's here this evening and will speak following me, has indicated that they are working to address these concerns, and planning staff intend on monitoring progress on this and will not be bringing a recommendation report forward until the comments of the region, the MPCA, and the Environmental Advisory Committee have been addressed. The official plan designates the subject lands as urban residential, environmental protection, and environmental conservation, as well as being within the craft drain area. The majority of the property is currently zoned neighborhood development, which permits only existing residential dwellings and accessory uses. The portion of the property that is identified as being part of the provincially significant wetland is zoned environmental protection, and the wooded area has an environmental conservation overlay. The applicant is proposing to rezone the property to residential multiple 1, RM1 zone, which would permit the proposed single detached dwellings, semi-detached dwellings, and townhouse dwellings. No site-specific regulations for the zoning are requested. This is a picture of the subject property on a very snowy day last week, looking northwest from Helena Street. And this is a portion of the northern part of the property looking west from Helena Street. And that concludes my presentation at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kernahan. Do any members of council have any questions? Councilor Noyes?
Thank you, Mayor Redekop, to the planner. A few questions. Will it be done in phases?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd have to ask the applicant about that. There's no phasing plan submitted with this
The
plan of
applicant's usually
subdivision?
coming forward. You mentioned after you
Yes.
speak, so you can ask the applicant, Councilor Noyes.
With the clearing of the land, will it be staged in regards to that you're not going to do it like 4 years before the development actually occurs? Will it be done with the timing kind of just precede the actual development of the houses in that particular area? We've had a problem with some developments in the past where the land has been cleared and 8 years later, the people are still eating dust that live around it.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, staff's intent is always to have the developer hold off on clearing those trees until they're as ready as we can make them to proceed with servicing the development. So as part of their application, they sign a declaration that they won't remove any trees until they've received approval for their final subdivision agreement.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not just talking about the trees, I'm talking about the topsoil.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's the same condition applies for the removal of topsoil.
Okay, thank you. Through the mayor, one other question is like 351 units, if my math is correct, when I add up all the different things. Is there any parkland dedication unless is there a park plan for this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there is no park proposed as part of this development. The town hasn't identified a park in this specific area. There is a park identified in the neighborhood, northwest of the property, I believe. So they would be required to pay cash in lieu of parkland dedication as part of their final subdivision agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Northwest, what street would that park be on? Craft is the next road that runs north-south.
Off the top of my head, Mr. Mayor, I don't have the answer to that
You said
question.
northwest.
Yes, I believe it's on, I get them mixed up, Arthur, Albert.
That's east. That'd be
It's
east.
northeast.
Probably southeast. Probably southeast.
I'd have to get back to you. I don't have the answer to that question.
Yeah, okay, that's quite some distance away. Councillor Dubino.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Mr. Kernahan, I want to echo my concern as well about the lack of a dedicated park or playground facility in this plan. I understand that there's other parks in the general area, but this is almost like an island right in the middle of a kind of a wooded area, and you have a 70-kilometer-an-hour road that's not very pedestrian or foot traffic friendly. So my concern is you have a bunch of kids living in that neighborhood. You don't have a park or a place for them to play, let off energy. And the best way for them to get to, say, Albert Street, or I think there's a new park proposed as one of the off of kind of the Alfred area in through there. They have to go down a busy street. So my concern is if we don't have a better, active transportation facility on Holiness Street there, we may need to look into doing something to actually deal with the potential for kids in the neighborhood to have a place to play. So I'm hoping that's something that we can look into.
Through Mr. Mayor, I've heard those concerns, and I'll certainly take them back to our manager of policy planning who oversees the Parks and Open Space Master Plan, and future report, whenever it comes, we'll speak to those points.
Right, so we're going to be getting to the report eventually, so let's just confine these to questions of the planner. Are there any other questions on his comments? If not, then thank you very much, Mr. Kernahan. We will go to the proponent. Mr. Perry, are you here on behalf of the proponent of the plan? And could we have your name and, I guess, business for the record?
Good evening, Your Worship and members of Town Council. My name is John Perry. I'm a planning consultant. I've been retained by Mr. Bavakwa, who is the owner of the property, to look at the planning issues and to facilitate this application through the planning process. At the outset, first of all, the purpose of this meeting this evening is, I'm sure you're all aware, is to gather information from the public formally. We did hold a public information open house. We consulted with the public. The response was actually positive because the residents didn't express any objections. They were actually a little bit pleased about the whole idea that they're going to get sewers out there that we're going to build for their benefit. So this evening is a public meeting to hear from the public. Now, as background information, I was retained by Mr. Bavakwa around about 2 years ago, and we've been working through this thing slowly and carefully. We requested a pre-consultation with the town staff and the agencies. As was explained by Mr. Kernahan, we were given a list of studies, in effect our marching orders as to what we had to do, and we've done those studies. What has transpired from that is basically that the studies were completed. Now the agencies are asking questions about, we need a little more work here, we need a little more work there. Conservation authorities indicated they have some concerns they'd like to see addressed, and in a lot more detail than we've done. We've consulted with our environmental consultant who actually prepared the EIS originally, and he's indicated that yes, we can deal with all of those, so we're going to go through that. There was an issue with the archaeological assessment. We did stage 1. That has been determined to be not quite enough, so we're going to do the stage 2. We have no problem with that. We'll proceed with that. So in essence, what we're asking for this evening is very simply that you receive the information report provided by your planning staff and And then that will allow us to proceed and resolve the concerns of any agencies. And then the final report that you'll get will be the recommendations that your staff will suggest to you. And that will be up to you whether you want to approve it or not. But that is the sort of the big step at the end. This one is just to listen to the public and find out what they have to say. Now, in regard to the comments that were raised to Mr. Kernahan about the, let's say, park dedication, we have no issue with the park dedication, the 5% is required. If the council decides that they want a park there, then certainly that's what's going to happen. Because you're entitled to the land, you're entitled to the cash, whatever way you want to go. And I'm sure we'll work out something with you as to the best arrangement. It may be a little more land for the park, maybe a little, I don't know at this point in time. We'll work that out, and your staff will work that out. They'll report back to you, and we'll deal with it. But the bottom line in all this is that we're willing to work with the staff and the council in getting to a final approval on this, and we're also willing to look at any conditions that may come through that. So our request this evening, Your Worship, is only that the council receive the report and let us move on with our work. Thank you very much. Now, those are my submissions, Your Worship, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions the council may have.
Sure, thank you. Any members of council have any questions? Looks like there's a lot of work that you still have to do. Just having gone through the report and the comments made by the agencies and our own planning coordinator, it looks like there's still a fair bit of work to be done.
We understand, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. This time I'll ask if there's anyone who wishes to speak in support of the application. There is no one. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the application? Please come forward, sir. And we need your name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, my name is Frank Dyke. Address is 632 Holiness Street. So I'm the property owner directly across from the proposed plan.
Spell your last name, sir.
It's D-Y-C-K.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the main concern that I have is the width of the road. I go for walks from exactly that location to the end multiple times during the week, and it's an extremely narrow road. I actually took my daughter once, and only once only, because of the traffic that goes through. It is sort of like a throughway, and then with walkers, it's dangerous passing there. So something would have to be done. With that amount of people living there, they're going to be heading to the beaches to get to the walkway there, right? The Friendship Trail, right? And a park there, yes, it's fun for a while, but they'll head down the road and into that area. I like the idea, but something would have to be looked at. I also appreciate the idea of the sewer system as well. So there's pros and cons, but the width of the road definitely has to be looked at. That's my only concern.
Thank you very much. Do any members of council have any questions? Mr. Dyke, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else who wishes? Yes, please come forward, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Lena Band. I'm at 684 Helena. I would also like to discuss the suitability of the road. There are no sidewalks on that road. It is the most direct route from the Queenie into that subdivision, and will also be the most direct route into the Waverley Beach subdivision should that happen. Now, if the road goes ahead and is widened, it will greatly impact the houses that are already on Helena Street. We've got fairly deep ditches there. So that is one of my concerns. My concern too is that Fort Erie needs family-friendly developments. People dream of having their own yard where their children can play, and high-density townhouses do not provide that. I know that, yeah, it costs a little bit less money to have a townhouse, Most people will use a townhouse either as a retirement property, and that's assuming it's not stacked with 5 levels. But people are looking for perhaps even a smaller house with a yard. And sending your children out to a park anymore is not the way that's accepted. When we were kids, you got tossed out of the house, go play. Now, if you leave your kid outside the house without being attended, you're considered an unfit mother. You have to be with the kid at the park. So I do have concerns about the number of townhouses, the high density. I think Fort Erie has to start looking at catering to families and not just retirees. The Waverly Beach development, I think it's all geared to old people like us. And I'm sorry, but I mean, I'd like to see the green space. I have to worry too about your environmental impact. There are a large number of wild turkeys, deer. I've got deer in my backyard every night. And they go across the road and into that nice wooded area that will soon become a housing development. So I have a lot of really major concerns. I can see the need for a housing development, but I can't see a need for that density of a housing development. So I would like to really see them reassess it and look at single-family homes where they have backyards, where it is attractive to families. So, thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Don't go away. Are there any members of council that have any questions of Mrs. Van? Now you may go away.
Thank you. I'm dismissed.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition to the application? Yes, please come forward, sir.
My name is George Wiseman, Your Worship, and members of the council. I live at 311 Helena Street. I've prepared a document that I have sent off to Carol, and so that they'll have an electronic version of it, so I'll just synopsize because I know there's a lot of things to do. People like to get home. I have several issues, one of which is already been addressed, so I'll go over it fairly quickly, is transportation. The Town of Fort Erie official plan has much to say about transportation and specifically cycling, bicycling, and pedestrian walking. We know, obviously, because of the region has already said that Helena Street is substandard and needs to be widened. My thinking is that it needs to be widened at the developer's expense, and it should be widened from the Garrison all the way down to at least Albany, so that the sidewalks that are along Helena there can be accessed from this development. And the kids, the people, whoever's cycling, and it can get up to the mall and the Garrison area where there's sidewalks and they can get into the town. So that would connect the park and the town, which is, according to the Town of Fort Erie official plan, which I'm pretty sure anyone who asks, I can give chapter and verse here of the various ones set, and I'll give some examples like 2.3.12 transportation. The goals are to ensure communities and neighborhood function are properly connected to each other with employment centers, commercial centers, community facilities, with a safe and efficient transportation network, which also includes walking and cycling. And the town considers bicycling and walking essential components of a balanced and multimodal transportation network, and to continue in the objectives to promote the convenience and safety of all users of the transportation system, including vehicles, pedestrians, and cyclists. I use Helena pretty much exclusively, except for Lakeshore, to get over to Jarvis Street from my location next to Waverly Beach to get out to the mall and to the Queenie and all those kind of things. I don't often whenever there is somebody walking on the street, it is dangerous for them. There's virtually no shoulder. It just goes right into the ditches. And I understand the ditches are necessary because that's wet area and the water has to go somewhere. So I don't know what the conclusion would be to address that issue. Perhaps large diameter pipes and then pave over it or have the walkways over it or something. But in my opinion, if you're going to put 350 homes along in the middle of Helena Street, or even at the ends of Helena Street, like the Harbortown development or 672 Edgemere development, Helena Street definitely needs to be widened and made pedestrian and cyclist friendly. To continue on that, in I, it says, in the objectives, it will be to examine the facility for providing on and off-road walking and cycling linkages to the transportation network, which is essentially what I was saying. And I'll skip over that one and that one. And in general policies, 4.7.1 of neighborhood planning, it specifically says that new residential development within the urban area should proceed in an orderly, phased manner to allow land and infrastructure to be used in an efficient manner. Infrastructure should not be extended through unplanned areas, and residential development should be able to integrate with existing planned or developed areas. So again, there's just multiple times through the official plan where it says they really need this connection for transportation. And I believe that the Town of Fort Erie planners and the development planners should be considering this important feature of it. We have an opportunity at this time to make this happen in this area for Fort Erie. Another thing that I'll come back to that, but I happen to be at 4.7.1 neighborhood plan policies. And it specifically says the town will develop a neighborhood plan for each neighborhood, which is a craft neighborhood, prior to considering large-scale development applications. And this is a large-scale development by anybody's definition that will have significant impact on the neighborhood in which it is intended to develop. That may, have a significant impact. The planners in the report that was given to everyone stated that this particular policy doesn't apply to this particular development because, as I understand it, it's a pocket. It won't affect all the rest of the craft neighborhood. So because it's a pocket and isolated, there's no need to, there's no need to have a neighborhood plan in place. I disagree, because I think that the things that they're doing here would be then set a precedent and replicated. And the Town of Fort Erie planners, in my opinion, have been making other developments with similar logic. It's almost like there isn't anywhere in Fort Erie that needs to follow this particular part of the official plan because there's always some sort of justification that then takes away from the neighborhood's ability to speak to this. I'm here because I happened to see on Helena Street the sign that was there, and at a later time I did see the newspaper. But most people, if you ask them, don't even know that these neighborhood plans exist and that they have a say, or what say they would have, or what are the considerations that they would have a say about. Most of the residents in the town of Fort Erie do not know anything about the neighborhood plans. It hasn't been told to them. It isn't told to them in any of these kind of things. So it's my opinion that people should be aware that there are neighborhood plans going to be put in place. Some of them are, I'd say about half of them are in place. I don't know exactly, but I do know that the Craft neighborhood plan is 7th on the list. And where I live in the Lakeshore neighborhood plan, it's 5th on the list to be made. So large developments are being put in neighborhood plans without the neighborhood residents being informed of it. And the information, for example, in this particular development, like anyone, goes out to specifically notifies people about 120 meters from the development, which of course this particular development only has people pretty much on one side of it, across Helena Street. So not very many people were even told that this would be a large development and given the chance to speak. And in this particular case, I think, it's my opinion, I would like to have considered that in the future, when large developments are being considered, that we're going to bypass the fact that there should be a neighborhood plan in place because what you're doing here may affect the neighborhood in one way or another. For example, this Helena Street widening, that affects the entire Craft neighborhood, and that hasn't been addressed and is important to the entire Craft neighborhood. So these are examples of the things that the Craft neighborhood residents should know, but never got a chance to even talk about. Now, obviously I am doing it, but I'm not a city planner. So I don't know all the different things that go into it, but I do know that, or I feel, that anybody who is going to be affected by something that is happening with the town should be informed that they're going to be affected. My opinion. So it goes on to say specifically in the policies for the neighborhood planning that under I, which is 4.7.1 2, and then I, site planning considerations that facilitate walking and cycling activity, such as a secured bike storage and lighting and bikeways. And it also says driveway access, internal roadways, pedestrian walkways that are safe and properly designed, convenient access to a collector or arterial road. It talks about walking distances and all of these things having to do with the development itself, but but this has to do with the neighborhood. I'm not talking about the development. In this policies, these are the neighborhood policies. So the development should be, if they're talking about complying with the neighborhood plan, well, first of all, there isn't a neighborhood plan, so there isn't really anything to comply with. But there should be a neighborhood plan. And if there was a neighborhood plan, I'm pretty certain that it would include making cycling and walking and pedestrian so that people would be safe. One of the things that the town of Fort Erie official plan specifically says that in the very introduction to it is it's there for making sure that the residents of Fort Erie convenience and safety. And not having this road widened is certainly not convenient and not safe. I do have some issues with agricultural. I know that this is a neighborhood development plan, but this particular property has a farm on it. Yes, it's a hobby farm, but I'm a cowboy from the bush, and I really love horses, and I loved seeing the horses, and I don't know if it was a profitable farm because the way I saw it being operated would certainly not be profitable. But as not only a cowboy, I have degree training in agriculture farm management, and to me that looked like a farm, and I thought it was a farm. And I understand it is a hobby farm, kind of designated as, and I understand that as far as the town of Fort Erie official plan and zoning goes, it's not zoned as farm, so therefore any objections to farm is just simply water under the bridge. But I still think that the town of Fort Erie should consider that it has agricultural purposes there. And the town of Fort Erie official plan does say that they will do everything they can to preserve agricultural land in their on 2.3.4 agricultural. The first goal is to preserve agricultural land in Fort Erie. So, and to reduce.
As you've pointed out, this is, in the official plan, it's designated urban residential, and in the zoning bylaw, it's neighborhood development. So it's not farmland.
I understand. And as I said, I understood that. I'm just raising the issue because, and it makes no difference to this proceeding, Your Worship. I understand that. I just, having my comment as seeing that I'm really sorry to see it go. However, that said, I am not against this development, not per se. I think having 350 new neighbors would be a great thing. And all I'm doing is trying to make sure that their needs will be taken care of at the best I can, as I would hope they would do for me. So this cycling and walkway thing, I think, is vital and should be considered. And because of the way developments go, I would propose that the council request that the developer pay for that. Because again, we know that the town of Fort Erie is always needing funding, as any organization does, and we want to reduce the amount of funding that they actually have to pay for something like this. So, and I know that sort of thing has been happening in the past. So I'm just going through my notes here again. Again, when it comes to 4.13 open space, 4.13.2 policies, in section 3F, it says, the separation of vehicular and pedestrian cycling traffic where appropriate and necessary with an overall pedestrian and cycling network is one of the things that they're looking for, and in the town of Fort Erie with their official plan. And in 4.13.3, parkland development, number 2B, to be accessible from major highways and roads by public transportation, walking and cycling. And in 5.5, neighborhood planning. A neighborhood plan is a general guide to the development and redevelopment of a neighborhood or part thereof. So therefore, this is one of the reasons that the neighborhood plan should be in place to take care of these things that aren't in the immediate development, so that the development complies with what all the neighbors in that neighborhood would be wanting. And in the general policies, 5.5.1, the neighborhood plan would be adopted by bylaw after consultation with all the neighborhood residents, property owners and stakeholders. So this is where I come back to, if you're not going to have a neighborhood plan and you're going to put a development in without having a neighborhood plan, you should notify not only from 120 meters, you should notify all the people in the neighborhood that this development is coming in, so that they would at least have some say, the chance to have some say. And in under the general policies in 5A, the neighborhood plan indicates the location and pattern of existing and proposed roads, as well as cycling and walking infrastructure. Now, this is not for the development, this is for the neighborhood. So part of a neighborhood plan is looking for the cycling and walking infrastructure. It also determines things like the ultimate population and number of dwellings to be expected, and et cetera, et cetera. So the development does definitely, in my opinion, affect the entire neighborhood in one way or another. Everything is connected, even if you have environmental protection zones pretty much around the whole thing. But we have an additional issue in that if you allow this to happen as is now, then what's to say that just down the road, another neighbor doesn't do the same thing, which has a property about approximately the same size. And I think I have an example, which is I'm not seeing the neighbor. It's just down by Washington Albany Street. There's another neighbor who has a similar sized property. It's long and narrow and goes around, and is also neighborhood development zoned, and actually probably more appropriate to putting a development on, because it's kind of alongside where the road is on a whole side as well. So in any case, I'm going to cut some of this short, and if the, I did find places like the minimum rights of way deemed necessary for major roads and collector roads like Helena is, but that's already been addressed with the regional saying that it's substandard. So already we know that we need to improve that road in order for this development to go in place. And I'm thinking part of that improvement should be to incorporate the cycling and pedestrian such as 12.7.2 general road policies Cycling considerations will be incorporated at key stages in the town's land use and transportation plan activities. This would actually be a key stage in this particular case, in my opinion. And already go with that. There are 12.11, they actually have a whole section in the official plan called bikeways and support facilities, where it essentially says that it'll be considered on and off-road bicycle paths will be considered in the overall planning. And again, I think it's a great idea to connect this development with the Waverly Beach and the Garrison. And almost done here. So I feel that since the town of Fort Erie isn't generally bothering with finalizing neighborhood plans before approving large developments as required by 4.7.4.1, and since the town of Fort Erie isn't informing all the residents of what is happening in their neighborhood, taking away, in my opinion, their right and opportunity to speak, and since the town of Fort Erie has not considered and addressed all the factors that will affect the entire neighborhood, for example, the cycling right-of-way being an example. I'm not a town planner, so I can't speak to all the different things that it would affect, but I did see this one. And it's mentioned multiple times in the official plan. Since the town of Fort Erie seems to have a policy to have only one official public meeting addressing any particular development, based on my past experience, I could be wrong about that. Since the various experts who are doing the studies aren't finished with their studies, as already has been seen, and since the regional authority is dissatisfied with the development conditions as they are currently, and since the conservation authority is dissatisfied with the development conditions as they are currently, I believe this particular public meeting to be premature, and I propose and request that at least one more be scheduled before consideration of the plan be done. And that concludes my presentation. Any questions?
I get to ask that question, Mr. Wiseman. Thank you very much for your comments. Now, you mentioned that you've provided a digital copy of your
Yes, I have.
comments to our clerk, and you'll circulate those to council. Thank you. Are there any members of council? Councilor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Wiseman, you made some very interesting points, and some of them I'll be asking at the time of the report, but I just have one question for you at this point, and that's with respect to the radius of informing neighbors. What do you think that radius should be?
I think since they're not having a neighborhood plan, I think they should do all the people in the neighborhood. Since
So
all the
just
people
up
in
and
the
down the street or in a circumference around that?
No, the craft neighborhood plan is defined in the official plan, and so all the homes, residents in the craft neighborhood would be informed, in my opinion, if there is not a neighborhood plan in place and there's a large development going to be put in place.
Any other members of council? Thank you very much, Mr. Wiseman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Members of council.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition to the application? If not, then I'm going to declare this public meeting closed. And we'll go to the next public meeting under the Planning Act. The information report relative to each of these will be dealt with later in the meeting. So this is the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments for 2651 Nye Road. Mr. Kernahan.
Thank you, Your Worship. This public meeting relates to an application for a combined official plan and zoning bylaw amendment, which was received from Craig Rowe of Upper Canada Consultants, who is an agent for Susan and Joseph Pissarro, the owners of the subject property at 2651 Nye Road. Subject lands consist of approximately 14.7 hectares of land containing a newly constructed single detached dwelling, as well as a detached garage. The northern portion of the site where the dwelling and garage are located is cleared, with a woodlot and provincially significant wetland occupying the southern portion of the site. The proposed combined official plan and zoning amendment would permit the creation of 2 1-hectare residential building lots for single detached dwellings in the northeast corner of the site. Creation of these lots will be subject to future applications to the Committee of Adjustment for severances. The easterly lot will have 100 meters of frontage, and the westerly lot would have 70 meters of frontage, both on Nye Road. The applicant's proposal to create the 2 lots does not meet the definition of an infill lot in the town's official plan, so an amendment to the infill policy is required to permit the creation of the lots. An amendment to the town's zoning bylaw is also required to permit a reduced lot area for the 2 proposed lots and the remnant lot, and a reduced lot frontage for one of the proposed lots. Notification of this public meeting was provided in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act by placing a notice in the January 10th, 2019 edition of the Fort Erie Post. In addition, property owners living within 120 meters were also circulated on this date. This is an aerial photograph of the subject property as well as the surrounding neighborhood area. The subject lands are located in the rural area northeast of the Ridgeway Thunder Bay neighborhood. Subject property is located on the south side of Nye Road, approximately 400 meters east of Centralia Avenue. The surrounding land uses consist of the following. Provincially significant wetlands are located to the north and to the south. To the east is an unopened road allowance and a single detached dwelling. To the west is a provincially significant wetland and a single detached dwelling. This slide shows the proposed site plan for the subject property. The existing dwelling and detached garage are shown on parcel 3 to the left of the screen, and the proposed 2 building lots are shown as parcels 1 and 2 to the right of the existing structures. The woodlot is shown to the bottom right, and the provincially significant wetland is mostly south of where the extent of the screen is shown. This slide shows the natural heritage features on and in the vicinity of the subject property as identified in the official plan. There are natural heritage features on the south portion of the subject site, including a provincially significant wetland, woodlot over 2 hectares, and an environmentally sensitive area associated with the wetland and woodlot. Although these features exist on the subject property, development, including the proposed lot lines, will be a significant distance from these features. The MPCA and region, during the pre-consultation stage of this application, confirmed that the setback was adequate to waive the requirement for an environmental impact study. Official plan designates the subject lands as rural, environmental protection, and environmental conservation. The proposed lots are in the area designated rural, and no change to the environmental conservation or environmental protection areas are proposed. The rural policies of the official plan only permit lot creation when the lot can be considered an infill lot. Infill lots are narrowly defined as a new lot which fronts on a public road and which is situated on the same side of the road and between either an existing dwelling and another existing dwelling or a natural heritage feature. The infill policies also require a minimum lot area of 0.4 hectares and a minimum frontage of 46 meters. The applicant's proposal to create the 2 lots does not meet this definition of an infill lot, so an amendment to the official plan is proposed. However, notwithstanding, the proposed lots are permitted by provincial and regional policy and are similar to other lot sizes in the area, making the proposed official plan amendment supportable from a planning perspective. A portion of the subject lands which are subject to the application are currently zoned rural zone. The rural zone permits single detached dwellings on lots with a minimum area of 6 hectares and a minimum frontage of 95 meters. The proposed rezoning would change the zoning to a site-specific rural zone and is required to permit the proposed minimum lot size of 1 hectare for both the proposed lots and the proposed 70-meter frontage on the westernmost proposed lot. This is a photo of the newly constructed existing dwelling on the subject property, looking southeast from Nye Road. And this is a view of the subject lands looking south and west along Nye Road at the east end of the site. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kernahan. Do any members of council have any questions? Thank you very much. I know the proponents are here. Mr. Rowe, did you want to speak to this? Briefly, please come forward.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. My name is Craig Rowe. I'm a senior planner with Upper Canada Consultants. Town planning staff has done a great job surmising what the application is about, so I don't feel a need to kind of go over those issues again with you. We've read through the preliminary staff report. We have no objections to any of the analysis. It was brought to our attention that a road widening is required, so we've been working with our surveyor to do some slight adjustments to ensure that after the road widening would be taking through the committee of adjustment, that a 1 hectare lot is still maintained and that we wouldn't be trimming a little bit off and then coming under and not meeting that zoning requirement. As you can see on the aerial, we're essentially penned in between floodplain, provincially significant wetlands, and with a dwelling on site right now, it makes the agricultural yield of this land not very feasible. We feel it's an appropriate spot for infill, and it will mix nicely with some of the existing development. I believe it's the Oak Hill neighborhood that's to the northwest there, so I'd be happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Thank you. Any members of council have any questions? Thank you very much,
Great.
Mr. Rowe.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here who, other than the owner, who wishes to speak in support of the application? Please come forward, sir. How are you this evening?
I'm good, Your Worship. How are you?
Good. We need your name
Town
and
Council.
address.
My name is Ray Daly. I live at 2549 Nye Road, beside this new proposal. I have nothing against this proposal. I met with them here at a town meeting on December the 12th. The only concern I had, this is like kind of out in the middle of nowhere, so I've been kind of out in the boonies. My concern is if we could have a berm, tree line of greens, spruces or something, put down the side for visual and sound. Help keep it a little more secluded.
That is referred to in the report.
Is it? Okay, well, that was my only concern. Other than that, I have nothing against the proposal.
Wasn't referred to positively, but it was an indication that you were at the public meeting and that you requested this.
Okay.
So we do have it, at least we have comment on that.
Okay.
Anyone like to ask Mr. Daly any questions? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Nice to see you again.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in support of the application? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the application? There being none, then I'm going to declare this public meeting closed, and we'll be dealing with the report shortly as well. That takes us into our third public meeting, which is an official plan and property rezoning with respect to 615 Burley Road North.
Thank you again, Your Worship. This application, an odd coincidence, is very similar to the one we just had a public meeting on, so I apologize if things get a little bit tangled up. But it's also for a combined official plan and zoning amendment, an application that was received from Michael Sullivan, who's the agent for David and Christine Watson, owners of the subject property located at 615 Burley Road North. These subject lands consist of approximately 6 hectares of land, which contain a single detached dwelling and a detached garage. There are no natural heritage features on this subject property, which is grassed with some small shrubs and a few trees present on the property. The proposed combined official plan and zoning amendment would permit the creation of 3 1-hectare residential building lots for future single detached dwellings, which would front onto Burley Road North. All lots are proposed to be 1 hectare with approximately 49 meters of frontage. Subject property is designated rural in the town's official plan. The town's rural policies only permit severances on an infill basis. This proposal to create the lots does not meet the definition of infill, so an amendment to the official plan's infill policies is required to permit the proposed lots. An amendment to the town zoning bylaw is required to permit a reduced lot area for the severed and retained lots and for frontage on the proposed lots. Notification of this public meeting was provided in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act by placing an ad in the January 10th, 2019 edition of the Fort Erie Post, and property owners within 120 meters were also provided notice on this date. This aerial photograph shows the subject property as well as the surrounding neighborhood area. These lands are located in the rural area north of the Ridgeway Thunder Bay neighborhood. Subject property is located on the west side of Burley Road North, approximately 150 meters south of Nye Road. Following uses are surrounding the subject property. To the north are single detached dwellings which front onto Nye Road. To the south are vacant rural lands and single detached dwellings. To the east is Burley Road North, a greenhouse and agricultural field. To the west is Shagbark Nature Park. This slide shows the proposed site plan for the subject property. The existing dwelling and detached garage are shown in part 4 in the middle of the screen. The 3 proposed building lots are shown as parts 1, 2, and 3, 2 of which are north of the existing dwelling and 1 to the south. This slide shows the natural heritage features on and in the vicinity of the subject property as identified in the town's official plan. There is a very small portion of the southwest corner of the subject property that is occupied by a portion of a woodlot over 2 hectares. This area is actually so small that it's obscured by the line delineating the subject lands. No development or lot creation is proposed in the area of this. There is a significant natural area associated with a woodlot over 2 hectares to the west of the subject property. The proposed lots will be set back in excess of 70 meters from this feature, so an environmental impact study was not warranted since they won't impact the feature or its function. As I mentioned, the town's official plan designates this property as rural and a very small portion of the property in the southwest corner as environmental conservation. The rural policies of the official plan only permit lot creation when the lot can be considered an infill lot. And as I mentioned in my previous presentation, the definition includes that it's a new lot which fronts onto a public road and which is situated on the same side of the road and between either an existing dwelling or another existing dwelling or a natural heritage feature. The infill policies also require a minimum lot area of 0.4 hectares and a minimum frontage of 46 meters. The applicant's proposal to create the 3 lots does not meet the definition of an infill lot, so an official plan amendment is required. However, since the lots are permitted by provincial and regional policy and are similar to other lot sizes and configuration in the area, this particular amendment is warranted from a planning perspective. This slide shows the zoning of the subject property in the surrounding area. The subject property is zoned rural RU zone, which permits single detached dwellings on lots with an area of 6 hectares and frontage of 95 meters. The proposed rezoning would change the zoning from a rural zone to a site-specific rural zone and is required to permit the minimum lot size of 1 hectare and the proposed 48 meters of frontage for the proposed lots and a reduced lot area of 3 hectares for the retained lot. This is a slide showing the existing dwelling on the property looking west from Burley Road. And this is a view of the subject lands looking northwest from Burley Road. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kernahan. Any members of council have any questions? Councilor Lubers.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Matt, can you just go back to the slide that shows the measurements of the frontage? 48, draw about 48 meters. And you said that there falls under infill lot sizes, that would be okay for frontage?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Lubers, that's consistent with the frontage identified in the official plan for infill lots, but not in the zoning. The zoning requires 95 meters, so that's why the site-specific zoning is required.
All right, now, if we go down the street, I don't know what slide it is, but you had one that showed some other lots. Yeah, lot 525. What's the frontage of them? 525, 29, and 535?
Yeah.
What's their frontage?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the frontage of those is consistent with what's proposed. It's between 40 and 50 meters.
Yeah, all right, okay, thanks.
Any other questions? What about the aquifer in this area? There was an issue raised by a couple of people with respect to the aquifer, the source of water, and then the septic systems. Any comment on that?
Yeah, the region shares the concern of the residents. This is in an area which has recently been identified by the region as a hydrogeologically sensitive aquifer. Which is a bit of a mouthful, but what it means is that sometimes in order to accommodate septic systems on lots in this area where there's limited fill over top of the bedrock, lot sizes in excess of the normal standard are required. So the region's requested that the applicant complete a hydrogeological study as part of the severance process to confirm the lot sizes which are proposed are adequate to accommodate the septic system and dwellings.
So if the results of the hydrological study were adverse, the size of the lots would have to be larger?
That's a possibility.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of council? Thank you very much, Mr. Kernahan.
Thank you.
Does the proponent wish to address council? Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My name is Michael Sullivan. I'm with Larkin Plus Land Use Planners and the agent for this application. I'll just keep it fairly brief, if you will, Mr. Mayor, because staff have done a very good job of presenting, and I don't wish to repeat anything they've said already. I'll start off by saying that the lots have been designed during pre-consultation. It was determined the lots would be to make them 1 hectare or larger would satisfy the servicing requirement to make them sustainable. That was the design. It was also, as Mr. Kernahan mentioned, to make them consistent with the neighboring lots. So we have consistency throughout. There was 2 approaches to the zoning bylaw amendment. The first one approach is to do a site-specific amendment, which town staff have requested. The other, which was initially applied for, was to change the zoning from a rural to a rural residential. We have adjusted the application to go with town staff's preferred approach, and that is to meet, have the minimum lot area of 1 hectare and the minimum lot frontage of 48 meters. And we believe when these lots were designed that they would be of sufficient size to address servicing, to be sustainably serviced, and we still believe that perspective. So we have some issue with the region's comments in terms of hydrogeological assessment. However, if that is council's wish, the town's wish, we will go ahead and do such a study to get that finished. I would note that it was not identified at pre-consultation, but if that is council's wish, as said, we will do that. We also note that we saw the neighbors' comments about water and about the need. So that, again, that was not identified until just now. We'd be pleased to meet with the neighbor who submitted comments and to work out a solution if that's appropriate. And the final thing just to mention to council is an archaeological assessment was completed on this property. A stage 1 was completed, which recommended going to a stage 2. That was completed, and there was no further work required, and a plan justification report was completed. Thank you, and I'm open to any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sullivan. Do any members of council have any questions? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak in favor of the application? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the application? Good evening, sir.
Evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Brian Page, 3385 Nye Road. I'm strongly against this proposal for severing these lots. I'm concerned about my water system. I purchased this land as well as my neighbors. We've got water wells on the system, on all our properties. By adding 3 more lots, it's going to put a severe impact on, if they decide to put water well systems in as well, impact on our water system. If we have to change our water system, you're looking at a minimum of $6,000 to another $4,000 for altering our landscape. I'm not prepared to have to do that. You can't control the heights of the water and water wells as you start putting more pressure on the systems. with a larger volume of more residents coming in. Once this severance, if this severance goes through and you can create 3 more lots, the next person down the road, they decide to make a severance and create more lots. We have an additional drain on the water system. So I'm absolutely not for this. The property behind me was, when it was purchased and sold, it was set as rural property. It should stay as rural property. It's what I bought into to have behind me. If you have zoning and you have zoning properties as rural, why are we changing them now again? They flip back and forth with these properties. You should not be allowed to do this. Bad planning. I had a meeting when I came here December the 12th, and talked to Matt Gurnham. He expressed that the town does not go with, when you subdivide properties into L-shaped properties, T-shaped properties. If you look at one of his slides, I believe it's on page 12 of the justification report, you're creating a T-shaped property with the original owner and these other 3 lots. If you look just south of that, that's an L-shaped property that they've created. Shame on the planning department for bad planning. This is against what the town's supposed to be doing. Again, I'm just totally ashamed of what's going on here. This bad planning needs to stop. It's not in the good effort of all the people. I'm a resident of Fort Erie, pay my taxes, and I'm not getting a fair shake with what's going on here. Additional septic systems going on these properties, and they're narrowing the size of the properties down. That could have effect on the water well systems, as well as not having enough water in the systems is going on. Another gentleman talked tonight on another piece of property, and I never even thought about this. You start cramming more narrow properties in, you got more people, more housing. The road size, there's always a lot of traffic on Nye Road, Burley Road. They're going through the stop signs. Close accidents, there's a lot of accidents on that intersection already. There's no sidewalks. There's young people. The neighbors are concerned, previous neighbors that live beside me. Speed limits has been changed, and now we're going to create more and narrower lots and bring more people in. When do we start looking at widening the roads and putting sidewalks in these properties? So, another thing to look at. But when you have rural property and people buy in and say, oh, I'm going to live in and have this property that's rural, and then want to change it, why have the zoning rural? Why don't we just have a free-for-all here? I also had sent a letter into the town. I'm not a very good speaker in public. I apologize for that. I do my best. But I sent a letter into the town with my concerns, and hopefully you guys have time to look at it and see what you think.
Thank you very much, Mr. Page. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Mr. Page. Mr. Page, you'll have to excuse my ignorance here, but where in comparison do you live to this block?
North, I'm the 3rd property. If you look at the top of the map, the 3rd property from the corner of Burley and Nye. So I'm the middle one of.
Thank you. I'll ask the questions when the report comes. Thanks.
Any other councillors? Mr. Page, how large is your parcel of land? Do you know?
2 acres.
So
It's 175 feet across the front and 500 deep.
about 1 hectare?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
That?
Yep. And we do have a copy of the letter that you sent in. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition to the application? There being none, then I'll declare this public meeting closed. And that will take us to the consent agenda. So I have report CAO 01 for 2019 and PDS 4 for 2019 that need to come out. I think I would also like PDS 03 for 2019 to be taken out as well. So that would leave not a lot. That would leave CAO 02 and CAO 03 in the package. Can I have a mover for those 2 reports? Those relate to the policy regarding pregnancy and parental leave and the policy regarding the relationship between members of council. Any questions or comments with respect to either of those? Councillor Butler?
Thank you, Your Worship. Me too. I just want to say thank you to those involved in bringing this policy to light and making sure that we comply with the employment standards legislation. And just wanted to congratulate everybody on doing a great job in presenting this, but wanted to ask if there would be also policy changes with respect to leave of absences for critical illness and caregivers. And I don't know who you can direct that to.
I'll, Mr. Cookett?
Through your worship to the councillor, it's something that we can look into. It's not on my radar, to be honest with you, so I definitely will take note and take a look at that and bring it back to council.
Thank you. And can I go to the next one?
Sure.
as well? Okay, thank you. Just with respect to the conduct of members and officers, I just wanted to say that I'm happy to see that this policy has come out, and I hope that members of council understand that this means that you can't talk over someone who has the floor or act in a condescending or demeaning manner because someone raises an issue or has an opinion that differs from one another. And I just do have a question, if I may, to either you or the clerk. Does badgering, does that fall under the code of conduct as well? I didn't see anything to that effect.
Should, in my opinion.
I believe it would be in the code of conduct, through your worship.
Thank you, that's it.
Thank you. Any other questions with respect to either of those two reports? I had a question, actually more of a comment with respect to the land. Wait a second, no, that's we're not doing that. Okay. We have to deal with that separately. I did have some questions with respect to the policy regarding conduct of members and officers. And I had some discussion with Mr. Cookett. So, Mr. Cookett, I had raised a couple of issues. One relative to paragraph 5.1, which were guiding principles relative to the conduct of members and officers. And I expressed a concern about the word in 5.1a, adopt policies. And do you recall what your response to my inquiry was?
I certainly do. You were suggesting different wording, and one of the words being council will favor policies that complement. And I agree with that change. I think that's a preferred word for that section A.
So that could be amended. So the first word instead of adopt could be amended to favor.
Absolutely.
And it also made comment about subparagraph F there, 5.1F, and you had indicated that there was a purpose for this particular provision, not so much to remind counselors that they should be reading their material, but it more or less focused on the second part of that paragraph. Correct?
That's correct, Your Worship. I apologize if that's been taken the wrong way. What I'm suggesting there is if counselors could, prior to council meetings, if they have questions for staff, to let us know what those questions are, so that we can be better prepared for the council meeting, have the answers for you. I think it just helps the whole process.
So I wonder if it would be appropriate for the words prepare for council meetings to be removed, but the balance of that paragraph to be left in. So in other words, members of council will review the agenda, talk to staff about the history and background, et cetera.
That makes total sense.
Okay, and then the third item was 5.2B, which had to do with staff exercising restraint in any criticism of corporation policy. And my view was that staff shouldn't be criticizing corporate policy. Did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I do agree with you, and I think the preference there would be to not criticize, is probably a better wording for that. We should not be doing that at all. We shouldn't be exercising. I think we should just not be doing it.
Because there are internal mechanisms for staff to raise concerns about a policy if they wish.
You are correct.
Okay, so just to encapsulate that then, 5.1A, the first word adopt could be amended to favor. Subparagraph F, the first four words could be removed. And paragraph 5.2B, instead of exercise restraint in any criticism, should be will not criticize corporation policy. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Is there anyone that would like to move to amend the policy? Councillor Butler. Madam Clerk, did you get those amendments? So we have an amendment of this policy on the floor. Are there any questions or comments about that? All those in favor of the amendment? That is carried. So then I'll call the question then with respect to reports CAO 02 and CAO 03. All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. That takes us back then to the reports that were removed from the package, the first of which is PDS 03 2019. I have a mover for that. Councillor Zanko. Are there any questions or comments with respect to this? Councillor Noyes.
Could we possibly say what it is? Because the numbers don't always go in sequence.
Yes, sorry. PDS 03 is the sale of limited markability land on Hiawatha, between Hiawatha and Mohawk.
Thank you.
Anyone have any questions? So the question that I had, and Ms. Dolch, you're the author of the report. You, it indicates here that staff is supportive of both of these parcels being conveyed to the applicant who raised this with the town, and not the parcel 2 to be conveyed to the owner of 1021 Oak Hill Boulevard. I know what the report says about this, but wouldn't conveying parcel 2 to the owner of 1021 Oak Hill Boulevard also accomplish the objectives of consolidating the lots, creating a larger parcel in the event there was some future development that might take place if this land ever got serviced in the next, say, 20 years if municipal services? Wouldn't that be a larger parcel more conducive to some type of development? And in any event, could we hear your thinking on that?
Sure. In this case, the applicant who's made the application owns 2 adjacent parcels to these parcels that the town owns. If he combines the 2 together with his current holdings, he will have a lot area of 1.95 acres. The owner of 1021 already has an acreage of 3 acres. And in this case, we felt it was better to have a larger parcel associated with the gentleman who currently owns the applicant. There is some environmental significance on his conservation on his property. And in order to build on this property, you do need to have an area outside environmental area of 1 acre. So we wanted to, of 1 acre, a minimum. So we wanted to make sure we gave him ample opportunity to achieve that. And like I said, 1021 is already an oversized parcel for this area, so we didn't feel it necessary to convey parcel 2 to 1021 as it's already 3 acres in size and would limit the ability of the applicant on developing his parcel.
My understanding in reading the report is that the applicant can build on, if he were to receive parcel 1 or purchase parcel 1, he has sufficient land to construct a building now with that parcel, according to the report.
Possibly. Obviously, he does have environmental conservation on the property, so he has to have an acre of land outside of any environmental significant area.
Okay. I have no other questions. Does anyone else have any? I'll call the question with respect to this. All those in favor? Well, you're not on the agenda, and you did provide us with your letter is part of the package. So we're familiar with your position, and that's really the basis of the questions that I raised. However, I've just called the question, and the majority has just passed the report. And so these parcels are going to be conveyed to the applicant who first raised the issue. Okay. Okay, so we'll move on to the next. You got that vote, did you, Madam Clerk? Okay. That takes us then to PDS 04 for 2019, which is the Oaks at 6 Mile Creek Assumption Agreement. And I have a mover for that, Councillor Dubino. Are there any questions or comments with respect to this? This was taken out of the package because Councillor Butler has a conflict. If there are no questions, all those in favor? Unopposed, that is carried. And then the final report, which needs to be dealt with in components because I have a conflict with respect to a part of it, is CAO 01, which deals with the minutes of the land committee. So I would ask for a mover for that report with the exception of item 311, of which I have a conflict. I'm a mover for that. Councillor Zanko. So are there any questions or comments with respect to the minutes other than item 311? Mr. Cookett, on page 3, there's a reference to Everton Road allowance. That's that small stub north of Thunder Bay Road, and the neighbors were each wanting to acquire a parcel of it. The minutes say that it was, well, let me get to it. The implication that was left is that the neighbors would be splitting this down the middle. In actual fact, I believe the recommendation from staff is that 2/3 would go to the one neighbor, 1/3 would go to the other neighbor. Do you recall that, Adam?
I honestly do not recall that, Your Worship. I'd have to check back in the minutes and have the Ms. Bradnam review that. I don't know if anybody else that attended that meeting, Mr. Walsh, was there as well, if he recalls.
Well, I'm pretty confident on this because I had a lengthy series of conversations with one of the property owners who's using the property as a driveway. And Mr. Vanderveen has been involved in this as well. And the correspondence that's gone out suggests that the individual who's been using the property or the road allowance as a driveway can acquire 2/3, and the other party will acquire 1/3. So I think we should, if there's no one else here that has the same recollection, then I don't think we should be dealing with this evening. I think we should put it over to the next meeting. Does anybody know if that's going to, do you know, Ms. Dolch, if that's going to create a problem? Or would you, you may not know that.
No, we did have the lady approach us today about this particular item. We did say we'd get back to her so we can inform her. We are going to give her a call back tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any pressing need, but please confirm that what Mr. Vanderveen has been communicating with the neighbors.
Yes, and it is correct. That's what staff recommended to Land Committee. I don't know the outcome, though, of that discussion.
Right, okay. So we have a mover that item, which is item 1 sub 2, request to purchase Everton Road allowance be adjourned to the next council committee meeting. Councillor Butler, any questions or comments on that? All those in favor? That is carried. So are there any questions with respect to the balance of the minutes other than item 311? I'll call the question. All those in favor? None opposed. That is carried. So who's the acting mayor? So I can Councillor Zanko, can I hand the chair to you to deal with?
Yes, you can, Your Worship.
In report CAO 01.
Does any member, or can I have a mover for item 311, Councillor Butler? Does any member of council have any questions or comments? Councillor Butler? Any other member?
Yes, it is.
Okay, back to you, Councillor.
I'm sorry, yes, it is. So I just wanted some clarification with respect to Grove, because there is a report coming forward later on this evening. And just wanted to clarify, when when the town goes out for an EIS and pays for it, does that then get settled up by the sale of that property?
Ms. Dolch?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Sorry. When the town spends, $22,000 for an environmental impact study and then sells that property later, do they get reimbursed for that EIS spend?
No, right now, the recommendation, it's upfront. We would pay that cost. Obviously, the cost when we sell the land and if the environmental study has been done, it may raise the value of the land when we do the appraisal value because it's no longer constrained environmentally.
Anything further? Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That passes, and I will hand the chair back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor Zanko. That takes us to Planning and Development Services, and ordinarily I would call an adjournment right now for a few minutes, but we have a delegation. Mr. Bruins and Mr. Brunner have been waiting here patiently since 6 o'clock. So, yes, if I hand the chair to you, Councillor Butler, will you undertake to give us a break after the presentation? Thank you. Over to you, Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. Planning and Development Services is now open. We have a presentation and a delegation from Mr. Ron Bruner and Casey Bruins from the Ridgeway Lions Club regarding report number PDS-08-2019, award of contract Bay Beach playground equipment. Could the two of you please just state your name for the record?
Layouts, different layouts and playgrounds from bidding contractors. Democracy process was used by the attending children to let them tell us what they liked the most about the 3 playgrounds. The children put colored dots on pieces of equipment that they liked the best on all 3 layouts. On January 23rd of 2019, the evaluation committee of 5 members, which Casey and I were a part of, met. We looked at what the children had told us through the Democracy, and we listened. We each filled out an evaluation sheet rating the 3 different concepts. All 5 of us on the committee agreed to the same design. Once this was done, the bids were then opened. No one knew until the pricing of the 3 designs. They were all within $400 of each other. There was, however, one piece of equipment from another design that the children loved. The contractor that we chose does offer a similar piece of equipment. With the extra funds that we've raised, we're hoping that we can negotiate with the town and the winning contractor to get this installed within our budget. At our last Lions Club meeting, Casey and I presented all this information. Our club unanimously accepted this concept and design of the winning playground. The Ridgeway Lions are asking council to accept our decision on the awarding of the contract for the new Bay Beach playground. Signe will be giving more detail on this information, which I think all of you have a report on anyways. The Ridgeway Lions, again, need to thank the community, the small businesses, people from BC to Ottawa and Buffalo to Florida who without them, we wouldn't have raised this much money in such a short time. It's amazing the support that this fundraiser drummed up from the newcomers to 2nd, 3rd, and 4th generations that have been in our community.
And our club wholeheartedly supports it. We wanted it for the children. We wanted the children to choose. And it was nice because it met all the accessibility requirements, and that was something the Lions believed in strongly. And thank you, Council and Mayor, for letting us do this project. We'll find something else to work on together.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks.
That was a really great presentation, and I thank you for all of your hard work as well. Do any members of council have any comments or questions that they'd like to ask the delegates? Councillor Dubner?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your presentation. Thank you for all your hard work. You had mentioned earlier that you wanted to thank the community for everything they've done, but I want to thank you guys for taking this up and doing this. I have 2 young kids. Stuff like this is very important to me, and I think it's important to the community as a whole. The fact that you went out there and raised that much money in such a short period of time so we can have this playground as part of the park is it's phenomenal. Thank you so much for all the hard work you did. It means a lot to me personally and to the entire town as a whole. Thank you.
Can I just say a nice way to thank the community and the Lions and ourselves is Signy's working really hard, and Tom and everybody else in the town. Staff's working really hard to get this thing done for our Canadian long weekend. We have to kind of fall within what we can do with the contractor there. But if we could do that and have a nice opening day, that would be fantastic for the community. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Yeah, so on behalf of the council and all the residents of Fort Erie, we want to thank the Lions Club. We know that you've thanked the community because obviously they provided the funding, but without the work, the hard work of all of you and your members, this just wouldn't have happened. And you may recall that there was some concern about whether this money could be raised as quickly as it was. You didn't seem to doubt it at all at the time, and I'm really looking forward to another project that we can task you to raise money for. So thank you very much, and please pass that on to the members.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your
I'll thank
Honor and
myself
Council.
for being associated with you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Luberts.
Doctor? Is there a
Didn't know you
doctor
had a
in the house?
medical degree.
Yes, I need a doctor. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And Casey and Ron, just a comment, this is a long time coming. And the people in Crystal Beach years ago had stated that what they'd like to see down in Bay Beach was some parking in a park. And you guys came through with the playground equipment on behalf of Friends of Crystal Beach, on behalf of the BIA in Crystal Beach and the residents of Crystal Beach. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a nice night. And with that being said, we're going to go for how long of a break? 5-minute break. lots 29, 56, 57, and 58, Plan 412, Birdie, Lot 55, Plan 412, Birdie, accept Plan 419, Lot 132, Plan 419, Birdie, accept R 0365246, accept Eastwood Avenue on Plan 419, Fort Erie being olive pin 64178-0204 LT 2703020017 375000000. Can I have a mover on the floor? Thank you, Councillor Thanko. That report is now on the floor. Do any members of council have a question? Your worship?
Madam, I wonder if we could ask the clerk if it's necessary for you to have to read all of those numbers and lots and whatever. I would think if you just made reference to the first line, that would be adequate. I would think so, but that wasn't my real question. My real question goes to the philosophy of the speculation provision that we include in these agreements of purchase and sale. And I'm wondering if perhaps the CAO can make comment on why we do that and whether it's even really something that we should be concerned about, with the exception possibly of industrial land seem to sell at a discount.
Mr. Cookett?
Sure. Excuse me. Typically in a land sale, lands owned by the town, we have a non-speculation clause in there that states that there's a time frame. So the purchaser must have submitted a site plan within a certain period of time and developed that property. And typically it equals 3 years. And if they do not, then we have the option to purchase that property back at the same price that we sold it for. That's just so that purchasers don't bank or speculate on property that we're selling. We want to see this get developed. We want to see industrial lands get developed and employ people. In this particular case, we put the property up for sale. We did receive an offer which was higher than the asking price by a fair bit, and it's also higher than the appraised value of the property. There's a clause in there that basically or a condition they've put in the agreement that they don't want that speculation clause in there. And basically, what they're saying is if they were to sell it back to us, they would like a larger amount than what we sold it to them for. Normally, we wouldn't agree to that condition. In this case, we have because of the monies that we're selling it for. We feel that they are going to develop this. They've already done concept plans. There's a little bit of a risk there that they will sit on it, but I highly doubt that that's the case. Would we want to buy this property back at the $800,000 that we sold it for, and take the chance that we would then put it up for sale again and not get that $800,000? So we decided that it was probably the best interest of the town to sell it, leave that condition in there. We could, as the council could waive or remove that condition, cite it back to the potential purchaser, but there's no guarantees that they'll accept that condition, and they may walk. And I really don't think the second bidder's offer is a good bid for the town to accept.
So what's the worst case scenario, if I can ask through you, Madam Clerk, Mr. Cookett?
Worst case scenario is they purchase the property, the deal goes through, and they don't develop it.
And it sits there vacant,
That is correct.
and they don't allow us to park any vehicles there. That'd be the worst case, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I would think anybody that's purchasing property worth $800,000 is not going to sit on it. They could actually rent it out for parking. They're not going to recoup a lot of dollars by doing so. I really do feel their intent is to develop the property. If you look at their drawing, there's a commercial on the bottom and some rental units above. I think it's a great location for that. So I do believe they will move forward.
One last question, Madam Chair. Is there anything in the agreement that prevents the prospective purchaser from flipping this property? What if they know something that we apparently don't know?
Cookit?
I don't believe there's anything in the agreement that stops them from flipping this property.
So if that were to, sorry, but then I've just thought of another question, Madam Chair. So if that were to occur, we wouldn't have any, ability to control the development on that property because it would have been sold to a party with which we have no contractual relationship. And I wonder if that's something that the lawyer should be commenting on.
Mr. Lustig?
Thank you. Yeah, when we do this in industrial lands, we actually have the provisions, I think, registered on the title, and I don't think that we do that here so that it isn't binding on successors and assigns. It's just between us, as you say, under the contract and the purchaser. As far as control is concerned, there is zoning on all the other planning instruments that you've put forward, site plan control and everything else, so that whoever purchases it is subject to all of the normal and regular planning controls that you would have on the property. So those controls would exist notwithstanding.
Your worship.
So if we sell this parcel as recommended, we could acquire it, but would be at an inflated price as included in the offer from the prospective purchaser. And we wouldn't really have the ability to expedite development there, except under the threat of buying the property back at the inflated price. That's, I guess, what it boils down to, Madam Chair.
That may be the case. Cookit?
That is the case. The other thing I'd like to make note is if we do sign it back without that condition and they don't agree to it, and we keep the property, there's no guarantees in the future that we can sell it for this price or any price. There may not be an appetite to develop that piece of property, so it could sit vacant as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other members? Councillor Dubino?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And just to echo what the mayor was just talking about with regard to the value and flipping the property. I'm just curious, and maybe through you, Madam Chair, to the CAO, what would prevent the should this group become the owner of the property from sitting on it for, I believe it was 3 years was the development time frame, or was it 2? Either way, the amount of time, and then essentially Fort Erie taxpayers are buying this back at a value in excess of what it was sold for, and essentially using the town as a form of speculation to get a higher value on the property. I'm just wondering, are there any provisions to prevent something like that from happening?
Mr. Cookit?
The condition is in there for us to purchase it back at a much higher cost, but we don't have to buy it back. We can leave it with them and let them sit on it or do whatever they like with it.
Mr. Lustig?
Be recognized.
Sure. You want to pipe in?
I think I misspoke, and I apologize for that. In response to a question that came up earlier, in looking at the schedule to the Schedule A to the Agreement of Purchase and Sale, it actually does provide that the right to reconveyance shall be registered on title and on the completion date in priority to any mortgage charge or other expense of the buyer. And there is provision for it to be binding on successors and assigns. So to your question about the flip and have that right to repurchase, I answered answer was incorrect. Wait. I'm sorry. Okay, so just to repeat, can you hear me? Yes. So there is a right to reconveyance that is binding on successors because there is a requirement that it be registered on title, the right to reconveyance.
Thank you, Mr. Lustig. Did you have further questions, Councillor Dubenow?
No, Madam Chair, that pretty much answered my question. If we aren't bound to purchase this property back and can essentially leave it with them, I'm okay with this. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Noyes?
Councillor Butler, just a clarification in regards to what the CAO has mentioned, and in case I heard it wrong or understood it wrong, in that the purchaser who's offering the purchase, it doesn't particularly want that part within the agreement. He kind of wants that we have first, that he has to do within a time frame and then we get to buy it. I don't think he wants that. Am I correct on that?
Mr. Cookett?
Through your chair to the councillor, what they're suggesting is that the typical condition that we would have in a land sale is that we would purchase it back at the same price. In this particular case, they're saying, no, they want an escalating clause in there, and that we would have to purchase it back at $968,000.
Okay, and thank you for that. One further question, Councillor Butler, and this is kind of like going off on the, way off on the left side. In the meantime, let's say we sell the property, and there's a timeline. It's not going to be developed for let's say 2 or 3 years. Is there any possibility of the town leasing the property for the purpose of parking?
Mr. Cookett?
Through your chair to the councillor, that's we'd have to approach them and see if they were amenable to that and see if we could lease it. And then I guess what you're suggesting is we'd use it for parking.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Luberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm just a little curious as to when we, now I see that, let's take a look first at the report, and I see that they have a rendering here and they show some drawings of what they're going to build. And that's what they're planning on building, is that correct?
Mr. Cookett?
You, chair to the councillor, this is a concept that they had put together and submitted with their offer. I don't believe this is carved in stone. I think this is just their first kick at what they would like to see down there. We'll have control on what actually goes on that property as much as we can through planning process. But this is their first kick at what they'd like to see there.
Yes, thank you very much. And I think that's where I was going, because we, when we put the place up for, the property up for sale, we did stipulate that they had to develop it in a certain way. So they've agreed that they will develop it the way, basically the way we requested. Am I correct on that?
Mr. Cookett?
I believe Ms. Dolch will take that.
Ms. Dolch?
Thank you. Through you to the councillor. Yes, we did put stipulations in place in the zoning bylaw, and we took those right from the Bay Beach Master Plan. So those urban design requirements are detailed right in the zoning bylaw. So when they come in for a development application, those will need to be adhered to.
So what's to stop these guys? They purchase the land and then just sit on it. And they say, well, we're not going to do nothing with it. Now we got to pay them another $100,000 and some to buy it back. Can't we put something in there that if they don't build within a couple of years or 3 years or whatever, as long as it's got something to do with the town of Fort Erie not complying and not giving them the ability to build, and we want to purchase it, then we'll give them the extra. But if they just do nothing, I'm not too keen on giving somebody $100,000 and some for just sitting on a piece of property.
So Counselor Lubert's on page 5 of 19 on the report. Under alternatives, there is a paragraph that talks to that. Line the sale if we'd like
On page what?
to. Page 5,
Page 5?
yes. Under alternatives.
Well, that's the alternative
But
for
perhaps,
council, right?
Mr. Potter.
Yeah, through the chair to the councillor. As I had noted earlier, there's no requirement for us to purchase this property back at a later date at the 968,000.
One way or another, I guess we're taking a risk, but I'm not too happy with having to buy it back for more than what we sold it for.
Thank you, Counselor Luberts. Any other counselors? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That motion is carried. That brings us to report number PDS-05-2019, Proposed Draft Plan of Subdivision and Amendment to Town of Fort Erie Zoning. Can I have a mover for that? Counselor Zanko? Any questions or comments on that report? Counselor Noyes?
Thank you, Councillor Butler. I had a really brief discussion with Sydney during our break about some of the concerns that were expressed in regards to bike lanes and parks and things like that. And again, this is, and again, I'm not trying to put words in her mouth, but this is part of this is one development that, from what I understand, is that there's going to be more development around the area. And they're always thinking about parkland dedication, and that they don't want to kind of like nail it down today, because when let's say the parcel to the north of it or the south of it or the east or the west of it develops, that may be like part of the park would be in this new plan of subdivision, part of the park may be in that, so there would be a large neighborhood park that would then address the needs of all the area that's going to be developing around this. This is one plan of subdivision, but there are others that are anticipated that are going to come down to this area. And that's why parkland hasn't actually been specified on the plans, but definitely is in the planning mindset, so to speak, as this whole project goes along. The same thing with bike lanes and things like that.
Mr. Kernahan, would you like to speak to that, or are you good? You're good? Okay. Would any other counselors, Counselor Luberts, and then the mayor?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just talking about the parkland dedication. We do have a master plan, parks plan or whatever for the town. And is there anything in that area that we've designated as this is where our park is going to be?
Mr. Kernahan?
Yeah.
This area of town is considered south, and the master plan identifies the need for a park in Fort Erie South, recognizing that there will be more development in this area. The exact location hasn't been nailed down. The exact size will depend on the development in the area, but we have certainly identified this area of town as in need of a park in the future.
All right, okay. Thank you. And I don't know if I would address this to Matt, I guess, is when we had the Harbor Town subdivision and development in front of us a few months back, I brought up a point, I can't remember the section of our official plan, but it says that something to the effect that if there wasn't a neighborhood plan in place, then we wouldn't even consider the application for a subdivision. And here we are again, considering an application for a subdivision, and we don't have a neighborhood plan for the area. It's zoned neighborhood development, but no neighborhood plan, according to the gentleman that spoke earlier this evening. Can you comment on that?
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Luberts, there absolutely is an official plan policy 4.7.4.1 that talks about development where a neighborhood plan isn't in place. Mr. Wiseman accurately pointed out that policy, and I've heard references to that policy on a number of occasions, but that policy doesn't say that we won't consider development of any sort or subdivision of any kind when a neighborhood plan isn't in place. What it says is that the town should develop a neighborhood plan for each neighborhood prior to considering large-scale developments that will have an impact on that neighborhood. I've addressed that policy on page 7 of my report. The planning consultant who submitted the application addressed that policy in his planning justification report as well. And I consulted with our neighborhood planner regarding the applicability of that policy in this instance. All three of our views, for different reasons, are that this policy doesn't apply to stop development in this instance, considering the scale of the development and the likelihood of it having an impact on the surrounding neighborhood. There's another policy in and about the same section that talks about integration of development, medium density into existing neighborhood fabrics, and I speak to that on the same page of the report as well. And my view is that it can be integrated, subject to some site plan considerations that it would be considered at a later date. So my interpretation of that policy is that it doesn't serve to stop development in this instance, or only where that development is of a scale that it's likely to have a neighborhood level impact.
All right, thank you very much, Matt. And, I guess maybe what I need to ask is, if this development doesn't apply, and as far as I'm concerned, in my interpretation of this development, it's a major development. I don't know what is, what isn't. Same thing with Harbor Town. That was a major development in the area, in the neighborhood. So maybe what you could do is supply council with what is considered a major development, and when does this policy take place, and when is it effective? Because you talk about your interpretation of the policy, but I think if we read at the end of our official plan, I think it does clearly state that the official plan will be interpreted by council. I'm pretty sure it says that. I've read it. So what I'm saying is, if we have a policy that I read that says, if you're going to have major development, unless you have a neighborhood plan, that development won't be considered. Maybe we need to change the policy, or maybe that policy needs to be explained a little better, because that's the way I read it. We shouldn't even be looking at this subdivision right now without a neighborhood plan. So is it possible that you could provide council with an explanation of where that clause does apply and what situation it would apply?
Through you, Madam Chair, certainly in the future recommendation report to council, I'd be happy to provide some further analysis on that. I've taken some notes and certainly heard.
Thank you, Councillor Lubert. It's your worship.
Thank you. I'm going to come back to that the particular policy about the neighborhood plans. Most of the development in this area that I'm familiar with is taking place to the east, over towards Garrison Village, the most recent development, whatever it's called, Peace Bridge development, I think. And so there may be some development coming further west, but this particular piece of property is in what old-timers would call the hole in the donut. It's not serviced. It's got a lot of provincially significant wetland, and it's going to be very difficult to develop. This particular plan proposal itself wants to develop into environmentally sensitive areas, which the region, the Niagara Parks Commission, and I think even our town planners have some concerns about. So how does, what does large-scale development mean? This is 350-something units. It may not be large in Toronto. It's pretty large in Fort Erie, I would think.
Mr. Kernahan.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the Mayor, certainly, as I mentioned, I'm happy to report back on that, but the test I would apply to it would be something which has a neighborhood level impact on things that we would plan for through a neighborhood plan. So not to give too much credit to the application that we've received in terms of the studies that were done related to servicing or traffic, but preliminarily, those studies have shown that this scale of development doesn't have a neighborhood level impact on those types of things. So the question that I ask myself, one of them, when I'm applying a policy such as this is, how would a neighborhood plan benefit my consideration of this development? So I'm not sure that when I'm considering, and on no uncertain terms through you, Madam Chair, have we come to a resolve on this? There's, without a question, a lot of work that needs to be done. But when I tend to apply this particular policy, the question I ask myself is would the neighborhood plan benefit my consideration of whether or not this development makes good planning sense? And in this instance, I don't think it would.
If I might, Madam Chair, I wonder if Mr. Kernahan can remind us, is the Harbour Town development, is that in an area where there is a neighborhood plan, or is that not in a neighborhood planned area?
That the Harbour Town development's in the Lakeshore neighborhood. There's also not a neighborhood plan for that particular development.
Right. So the problem that I'm having right now, I don't mind if this is developed, seems fine. But Mr. Wiseman, and I hope you get a copy of his letter, because he raised a number of issues that I think bear precisely on why you would need or should have a neighborhood plan. Because here we've got two developments in two different neighborhoods, but for all intents and purposes will have significant impact on traffic on Helena Street. There's no doubt about it. That is, aside from people going to and from homes that may be built in both of those developments, it's one of the few through streets between Dominion and Garrison. And people that are looking for through streets will take that road. I know that because I take it all the time. And it is a 70. Sorry. I don't want to say how fast I drive. That's 70 kilometers. I thought that was miles per hour. And it is a narrow road. And if you put 350 houses in there, and you start talking about access to amenities, whether it's a park over someplace near Arthur, over by the Peace Bridge development, or whether it's to get access down to the trail, it does have impacts. And so it's not a safe road to walk on. You wouldn't dare let your child out there, even on a bike, unless they were a teenager. And they're going to do it regardless. So those are some really important facets that have been raised. It could be that this would be a normal development in another location, but this is I think a challenging location. And if both of those developments proceed, there will be significant flow of traffic on that road. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So that I would be looking for when they deal with all these various issues, I would be looking at a response to some of those issues relative to the road, what the road's going to look like. I know that it's not fair to expect this particular developer to be expanding Helena Street all the way from Garrison to Dominion. But we also have policies relative to active transportation, and we're trying to encourage people to get out and about. I think this presents a real challenge. There's just all kinds of challenges, and I know that at the end of your report, you mentioned that there are some significant concerns that the Region Conservation Authority, our own coordinator, has with respect to where we are right now.
Yeah, through Madam Chair, if I can just respond quickly. I made a note this evening when the issue of active transportation in particular came up, and how Helena Street might look post-development. I think my friends at the region might have been a little bit distracted by the inadequacies of the environmental impact study and some other things where they didn't give me a lot of comments back on what the future of that road might look like. So I've made a comment, or I've made a note to request back to the region to provide me some more comments on how what the impacts to this road might be. So.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you very much, Mr. Kernahan.
Any other members of council? Yeah, Dr. Dubin, or what I've got doctor on my mind. Councillor Dubin.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair, and through you to Mr. Kernahan, and also to echo what the mayor had mentioned. I think that the general feeling that we got from the public meeting was that people generally seem to be open to this proposal. There's not a lot of opposition to the idea of the growth in that area, but the big issue is the traffic on Helena Street. And you had mentioned your colleagues at the region. Are we aware of any plans going forward to address the inadequacies of this road, not just for this proposal, but also for Harbour Town, Waverly Beach, all the growth going on further down? Are we going to be coordinating with them to figure out a solution to this going forward in a broader sense that would help address some of the concerns of these residents?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, those are precisely the types of questions that I need to ask the region. This road belongs to them, so plans for this road really need to be with them. So, as I mentioned, they might have been a bit distracted on some of the issues which they find to be more interesting than the improvement to their road, but I've heard loud and clear tonight that there is significant concern with that road, so I'll be asking the region to give me some comments directly on what their plans are.
Excellent, thank you.
Councillor Luberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Councilor, Madam Chair. Anyway, I just wanted to make a comment on when we're talking about these neighborhood plans and not being allowed to develop and being zoned neighborhood development zone. And I'm going back a few years when a friend of mine approached me and wanted to do something with his property. And he was told, no, you can't do it. And if my memory is correct, when I spoke with him and I spoke with our planning department, I was told, well, it's a neighborhood development zoning. We haven't done a neighborhood plan yet, and so we're not going to allow any changes to be made until we decide how we're going to develop that land. And this guy's sitting on a nice piece of property, can't do nothing with it because there's no neighborhood plan. So I encouraged him to contact his counselor and have his counselor push for a neighborhood plan in his neighborhood. Now, he lives, I can't remember the name of the street, right by where Patterson Chrysler is. Is that Arthur Street, I think, in that area? And he's down near the end towards Dominion. And that's where he's at. And he's right behind a subdivision that Heinz Hummel put together. And he can't do anything with his land because he's got no neighborhood plan. And I don't understand why this guy comes along and says, oh yeah, well, let's consider it. I don't think he should be considered either, if my friend's not considered. Now, I'm going to go see him and ask him to give me the details again to refresh my memory. But, you know, I have a problem with this. If that's our policy, we need to strengthen that policy so that we all understand what it means, especially council. We are the ones that interpret the official plan. That's our role.
Thank you, Councillor Luberts. Mr. Kernahan, did you want to? No, you're good. Okay. Any other members of council? Councillor oh my God, Councillor Dubin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And just to address what Councillor Luberts had said about the individual on Arthur Street, I believe that is located in Ward 2. I have not been contacted by that individual. However, if that person wants to bring those concerns to me, I would certainly look into this, and I would encourage them to do that. Thank you.
Any other members of council have any comments or questions further to that? No? Then I will call the question. All those in favor? That motion is carried. That moves us over to PDS-06-2019, proposed combined official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. Susan and Joseph Paciro, owners, Craig Rowe, Upper Canada Consultants, agent, 2651 Nye Road. Thank you, Your Worship. That report is now on the floor. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That motion is carried. That brings us to the next report, which is PDS-07-2019, proposed combined official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. David and Christine Watson, owners. Michael Sullivan, agent, 615 Burley Road. Councillor Dubnow, thank you for moving that. That report is now on the floor. Any comments or questions? Councillor Noyce?
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Some of the comments that was brought by the individual who came before was talking about the well water and the problem with the, there's only so much water under the ground and things like that. Is there any possibility of then putting these, a stipulation put on these new developments that they be put on cisterns? So in other words, it's not a water well, it's basically a cistern that they put in and they bring the water in on a regular basis. And also, is there any protection in regards to the septic tank? Like, I don't know how that ground works. Are they going to be like the turtle ones to make sure that the water isn't contaminated in any runoff or whatever?
Ms. Dolch?
Thank you. So through you to the councillor. The hydrogeological study requested by the region is the study that will determine all that, whether or not they can drill wells or cannot drill wells, whether they have to use cisterns or not. And that's the study that the region will rely on to determine that, whether it's safe to have a well near the septic in this location.
Your Worship?
Just a question about the comment made by Mr. Page about the L-shaped lot and the T-shaped lot. He suggested there was something inappropriate. It looks to me like those were lots that were remnant parcels, but I don't know if that's the case or not. I wonder if Mr. Kernahan could perhaps comment on that, or Ms. Dolch, whoever.
Who would like to field that question? Mr. Kernahan?
So I don't want to cut you off, but I get that. But there'd be a T-shaped lot emanating from this particular proposal. Right. So that actually is beneficial in the sense that it helps to protect the woodlot. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Luberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Matt, just a question on the aqua geological or mouthful study that you mentioned a while back. There was I think it was the consultant for the people that wanted to do the severance. He was up here and he was talking about the study wasn't mentioned in the pre-consultation. And you remember that?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, I remember it well. The region's comment at the time of pre-consultation was that a hydrogeological study wouldn't be required if the lot sizes were 1 hectare or larger. They've since changed their mind about that based on some information they've made available to themselves, and they've requested that hydrogeological study at the time of consent. When the future application is made to the Committee of Adjustment to actually create the lot, they've asked that that hydrogeological study be submitted at that time.
They asked the town to make sure that's done, or just him?
Through you, Madam Chair, the region is a commenting agency on the consent application. So when they make their application in the future, assuming that this would be passed to create the lots, that application would be circulated to the region. At that point in time, the region would require that that hydrogeological study be submitted with their
Because
with their
that's
application.
what I was trying to get at, Madam Chair, was I was trying to see if there was something we could do to avoid this situation where the consultant comes forward and says, you know, you never brought it up during pre-consultation. And I'd like to make sure that, you know, when they come and we talk to them, that we tell them, oh, by the way, you might have to do this, just so they know. You know, surprises are frustrating to these guys. And so if that's what the region has decided that they're going to do from now on, then I guess he'll see it, right? At pre-consultation, he'll know it.
Yeah, well,
A future path.
through you, Madam Chair, as a matter of course, the whole purpose of pre-consultation is to reduce those surprises.
Okay, all right.
So if everybody's doing their job well, we don't have many of them.
So we can expect that not to happen in the future. We can expect it.
Through you, Madam Chair, that's up to the region.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We can expect it. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen. But I'll remind you that I brought it up at a council meeting.
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Luberts. Any other members of council? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That report and that motion is carried. That brings us to report number PDS-08-2019 Bay Beach Playground Award of Contract. Can I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor McDermott. That report is on the floor. Any members of council have any questions or comments? Councillor Luberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I think we've heard over the last little while that the Lions have raised more money than they wanted. And so there's this award of contract for all of even the extras. So that's all the extras is included. Everything is included. Okay, thank you.
Did you want to comment on that?
I will ask Signe Hansen to comment.
The award of contract is for the full $105,000 that has been raised by the Lions Club.
Thank you, Ms. Hansen.
If I may.
Oh, sure.
Okay, thank you very much, Signe.
Yep.
Just a comment. That I want to thank you for all the hard work that you've done, not so much the hard work that you've done, for all the accommodating that you've done to the people that have requested special favors or special things. Not so much favors, but people wanted to take pictures and people wanted to do certain things, and you always seem to come through and accommodate everybody. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Any other members of council? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. I just wanted to extend my gratitude to the Lions and to the community that supported them in their fundraising efforts. I think it speaks well of the volunteer efforts and the Lions organization as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? That carries, and that moves us to report number PDS 09-2019, Environmental Impact Study, Proposed Sale of Town Lands, and Amendment to Town of Fort Erie Official Plan and Zoning Bylaw number 129-90, south side of Grove Avenue, between Wells Avenue and Bernard Avenue. Can I have a mover for that, please? Councillor McDermott. And that report is now on the floor. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Councillor Dubineau?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just curious what the reason why the municipality would be engaging in the environmental assessment prior to the sale of these lands rather than selling the lands with the assumption that the purchaser would do their due diligence to find out if it could be developed and then perform an environmental assessment themselves afterwards if required. So I'm not sure which, I believe that would be, just if we could get some clarification on that.
Thank you. Ms. Dolch?
Through you to the counselor. The difficulty with this piece is we don't have a designated environmental protection or conservation. There is no environmental overlay on this piece. This was a piece that was raised by council at one point out of concern for the trees on this property. So they requested that an EIS, a price for an EIS be looked at this point. And that's why we're just bringing back the price to see whether you want to go ahead with an environmental impact study on this property.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you. And through you again, Madam Chair, I'm just wondering, I know that there's a potential that this property could be more marketable to a purchaser if the environmental assessment comes back favorable. Is it also not true that if the environmental assessment comes back and it's not favorable, that we could be all on the hook for this and it's something taxpayers will have paid for a piece of property we can't do anything with? I just wonder if there's some clarification on that.
Ms. Dolch?
Through you to the counselor. Obviously, that is a possibility. We haven't done any preliminary review of the site environmentally. So obviously, once that study's done, we'll know the impacts, whether good or bad, of that.
Councillor, do you have any further questions? You're good? Okay, any other councillors have any questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? That means that report is defeated. That brings us to new business inquiries. Do any members of council have any questions? Councillor Lubert's first.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just wanted to, if I could, remind Councillor Dubineau that when I was discussing his constituent, he wasn't a councillor in the ward at the time, and so I couldn't contact him, but I will speak to my friend, and I will make sure that he tries his best to contact Mr. Dubineau. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Luberts. Any other councillor? Seeing none. Moving to business status report. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, I will hand the chair back to you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Butler. That takes us then to Infrastructure Services. Councillor Zanko.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Infrastructure Services is now in session. We do not have any presentations or delegations. We do not have any reports. So if any members of council have any new business or inquiries? I'm seeing none. How about any questions regarding the business status report? Seeing none, I will hand the chair back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Zanko. That takes us to Corporate and Community Services. Councillor McDermott.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Corporate Community Services is now in session. We have no presentations and delegations. We have no reports. We have any new business inquiries? Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to clarify, a couple of weeks ago, I had my answer was incomplete with respect to membership to the EDTC. And it came back to my attention that, yes, I had in fact had tendered a resignation, but then found out it was not a conflict of interest to sit as a member of council and be a member of the EDTC, and had that rescinded. So I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further business inquiries? Councillor Dubino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm through you, and this is probably going to be a question for the CAO, and I'm just curious about on the website where they list, we're counselors. They give us a brief little biography. There's a map there, where it is. I've noticed other municipalities also list things like committee memberships and other things to help people determine, what this counselor does within the municipality, who they work with. I'm just wondering, maybe through you, if that's possibly something that we could look into in the future, just expanding on that with just some more information.
Mr. Cookett?
Through your chair to the councillor, that's definitely something we can look into. Just to bring to your attention, is this year in 2019, we're bringing forward a budget request to revamp our website. So we'll be reaching out to all of council to provide us with suggestions what they would like to see on the new website. So note taken here, and we'll be contacting you for further suggestions.
Thank you, Mr. Cookett. Anything on the business status report? Seeing none, we're adjourned on written community services.
Thank you very much, Councillor McDermott. That takes us to scheduling of meetings. Are there any meetings that are scheduled? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor. There's an accessibility committee meeting tomorrow at 5 o'clock. It was supposed to be last week, but because of the snowstorm, it's been rescheduled till tomorrow. And also there's a senior citizen advisory meeting on this coming Wednesday at 10 o'clock.
Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. There is a Community in Blooms committee meeting at 5:30 tomorrow here at the town on the second floor in the meeting room 3. And then on Wednesday at 5:15, there is an RBIA meeting at St. Luke's Church.
Any other meetings? Councillor Luberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Reddick. There's a BIA, Crystal Beach BIA meeting tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock at the Crystal Beach Fire Hall.
And we also have the opening of the Primary Care Niagara Regional Urgent Care Clinic and Family Practice. That's on February the 6th at 10 a.m. And we have our second. No, it's got to be our third budget meeting, isn't it? Only our second?
Yeah.
I guess it just seems like the 18th, and that's Wednesday evening, which I've already announced. If there are no other meetings, how about a motion to adjourn? Councillor Dubino. All those in favor? That is carried.
This feels
Just feels like